Hello, 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 LinkedIn. Good afternoon. To say that I'm excited today would be an absolute understatement. And the reason I'm excited, okay, so for anybody who knows me, knows that I do not get starstruck. Doesn't matter if a celebrity is eating at the table next to me, even if it's somebody I really, respect and follow their work, I don't care. If I go to a concert, I'm not one, hoping for an autograph or, hanging around. I don't care. However, there are certain moments when I do fangirl, fangirl is just a bad word. Moments when I fangirl, and those are only the moments when I get to speak to my favorite thought leaders. Those moments make me giddy, excited, nervous, all of those emotions combined. And so today is one of those days. Today, well, you should know because you're watching, because clearly you saw what this conversation is going to be all about. I get to interview Cameron Herold. And Cameron Herold is one of my absolute favorite thought leaders for a couple of reasons. But I mean, for just one reason. His work has impacted how I do business, has given me incredible, I was going to say return on investment, but what was my investment? Buying the books and reading them. And I'm just a huge fan of his work. There's no other way of putting that. If you have not read Cameron's books, you absolutely must. I will include them at some point below so that you can see. His book, Double Double, for example, taught me invaluable tricks on how to generate absolute free PR for myself and for my business, Parnexia. As a result, we ended up on first page of Google search. And as a recruitment firm, that's not easy to do. There's about 5 billion of us. First page of Google search. And then I read another book that he wrote elaborating on that concept or various concepts called free PR. Incredible. But the book that has been absolutely instrumental in shaping me as a leader, in shaping me as an entrepreneur, is his book called Vivid Vision. If you know me well enough, or even like ish, I've told you to buy this book, right? And I likely have asked you if you bought it and then made you talk to me about it, right? I've told so many people, including my own team. We do annual retreats, and our last retreat that we did in Tremblant in August or September. Now everything seems just jumbled up. Our dinner conversation was Vivid Vision. I got a copy of the book for everybody. We read it in advance, and we just sat there sharing and discussing and talking about it. So massive fan of Cameron's work. And if you don't know a lot about him, I mean, there's so much. I mean, in addition to those books that I'm mentioning, which are absolute classics in my opinion, he's also been called the CEO Whisperer by Forbes. And if you've heard of this tiny, tiny little company called 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I don't know if anybody's heard of it. Cameron was the CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. He joined when they had $2 million in revenue and grew it to, sit down, $106 million. I really hope I'm not messing it up because it just seems like that's just crazy growth in 6 years. Okay. He's helped companies land over 5,000 media placements, including in Oprah. And he just has, more accolades than I have time to describe. And instead of me describing, I think it's best that we hear from the man himself. I'm looking forward to asking him a whole lot of questions. But there's one thing, and to all of you COOs listening right now, I want for you to put in comments below what you think about this. So Cameron, I've watched a lot of his interviews and talks, etc., and he's been asked, what is the COO's job, or what makes a really great COO? And he said the COO's job is to make the CEO look awesome. So he said a great COO is somebody who wants to help the CEO become iconic. To me, that sounds ego out the door and the window. So if you're a COO, what do you think? Agree, disagree, confused? Write down in comments below. And in the meantime, I would like to introduce you all to Cameron Herold. Cameron, welcome.
Hey, Marina, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. That was one of truly the nicest introductions ever. And I was gonna go and try to find like some funny hat or something to put on just to embarrass you after you said like you're a fan girl. I was gonna like kind of rip myself down, but thank you. That was really wonderful.
Or you could have just walked off and left that seat
Well,
there, and then I would just go like click.
I'm actually walking. I had my hip replaced, my left hip replaced from an old running injury and marathon injuries. I had to get my hip replaced 25 days ago, and I'm actually walking perfectly without a cane right now. So I could walk, which 25 days ago I couldn't.
Okay, but so congratulations with that. But what do you attribute that to? Did you use your vivid vision concept to visualize yourself walking again, or not at all?
No, I didn't use the vivid vision concept, but I definitely use my tenacity and my. I'm very systems oriented. That if a system exists, I'll follow it, and if one doesn't exist, I'll create one. And the doctors gave me a system to follow for my pre and post op to be prepared, and I've just followed it to a T.
Nice.
So yeah, the exercises and the nutritional supplements and everything, just doing the work.
Well, congratulations, though. I've been watching your progress. You've been documenting it on Facebook, and I've seen you like try take a first step and actually walk. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So many questions for you, and I will start with just continuing with what I said when I was introducing you, which is your definition of a great COO. Right? So you're saying the CEO's job is to make the CEO look awesome. Tell us more. Where does that come from?
The CEO is really to be the iconic figurehead of the company, and the COO's job is to really shine a spotlight on them to make them iconic. I've almost felt like the CEO and COO are a really yin and yang partnership with each other, where the COO's job is to shine a spotlight on the CEO, and the CEO's job is to shine a spotlight on the COO. Entrepreneurial CEOs can often be very ADD or bipolar, very scattered, a million ideas, big shiny object syndrome. But they're visionaries and they're leaders and they're growth oriented, and they don't always have all the systems. The COO's job is to play cleanup for them and to take all this stuff off their plate that they suck at. The COO often has to be the bearer of bad news and the one putting the systems and rules in place and holding people accountable and making sure we get it all done. So they're often the tough guy to the fun person who's the leader. The leader's job is to kind of go behind the scenes and make sure, it's just Cameron's just doing his job. He's supposed to be that way. He's supposed to make me look good. So it's almost like a husband and wife raising a family. Behind the scenes, they can argue and fight, but never in front of the kids. In front of the kids, they've got to be that force that always makes each other look good.
Very interesting. And so how can you ensure, and I suppose this is just like a pure headhunter's question, okay? But how do you ensure when, let's say somebody's looking to hire a COO, especially their first COO, and that happens to us really frequently because at Parnexium, a headhunting firm, we work predominantly with small to medium-sized businesses that are scaling. So it often happens to us where our founder-run businesses come to us and say, we now need our head of ops. And then we ask them, first of all, what is this person going to be doing? And that varies quite a bit. And then how do we guide them in trying to uncover whether the CEO they're interviewing has that mindset that you're talking about? Is it a common mindset, by the way?
Yes and no. It's interesting. Most COOs, most seconds in command don't want to be an entrepreneur. They don't want to be a CEO. So you're looking for someone who wants to be a COO, wants to grow the company, doesn't really want to be the entrepreneur. So they can be entrepreneurial, but not necessarily want to run their own company. They also have to really know that they're great in some areas and they suck at others. And hopefully the CEO they're working with is great at what they suck at and vice versa. So as an example, if you think about Harley Finkelstein from Shopify, Harley's a very solid COO. He's the second in command. He's business development, he's sales, he's marketing, he's PR, he's operations, he's culture. Tobias Luke, who's the CEO of Shopify, is very inward facing, very much engineering and product focused, and sometimes not even that outward with the media and the exposure. So they know where each other are very strong and they don't get in each other's way. Harley doesn't get into product. Tobias really doesn't get into sales, marketing, PR, business development. At 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I'm terrible at finance and IT. Brian liked IT and finance. I know other COOs that are members of the COO Alliance, that the COOs run finance or they run IT. I know other ones run sales and marketing. So it's the yin and yang approach. It's the true partnership at the C level. I'll give you one other good example of this, that when you really know your sandbox. My brother and his wife have what they call the pink jobs and the blue jobs. Now, the pink jobs are Jody's, the blue jobs are my brother's, but they're not the traditional pink and blue jobs. My brother loves folding laundry, but he doesn't like doing laundry. My brother loves cooking, but he doesn't like cleaning. Jody likes cleaning. She doesn't love cooking. So they've kind of divided and conquered, and now they have his jobs, her jobs, and they work really well together as a team. And I think when you do that inside of a company, if you're looking for a second in command, you have to clearly define the roles that you want that second in command to play. Find someone who has done those before, who loves doing those, and who doesn't want to do the stuff the CEO is doing.
Okay, but see, that's why you are a thought leader, because this is not something that we usually hear, right? And we've worked with some brilliant CEOs and amazing companies and, heads of HR, but very senior heads of HR. And usually they will be looking for that standard, because most other roles are clearly defined. Like if you're looking for a CMO, you kind of know what you're looking for, right? Or any other similar. But you're saying the COO job description, there is no.
Well, Harvard actually wrote an article about 14 years ago called The Misunderstood Role of the COO. And this is one that any recruiter doing anything in your space should take a look at the article. It's fantastic because it outlines 7 very different styles of COOs. One is the heir apparent. One is the kind of change maker. One is the operationally focused COO. So they looked at these different types of people that play that role. And that's why it's very different in every company. It's also very different because, as we outlined, some CEOs like marketing, some don't. Some like sales, some don't. Some like ops. So you're really there to be the yin and yang with the CEO. The second thing that's so important is the cultural fit with the COO, with the company, and with the CEO. They really, really have to like to hang out with each other. They have to be able to spend time, very much like a married couple. You have to really like each other and want to spend time together, because you're going to be working on the hard stuff. You're going to be dealing with painful decisions. You're going to be dealing with trust issues that have to be implicit with each other. So a very strong degree of trust. I had a CEO one time, they said, oh, you don't really know until 90 days if you made the right decision. I'm like, that's because you suck at interviewing.
Yeah.
If you know what you're looking for and you're really good at interviewing, really good at torque, really good at reference checks, you know everything about the person before they've joined you. And the trust level is so high that you'll give them the keys to your bank account, your passwords on day one, because you've done the front work to bring them in. And I think that's what's really important to bring a good COO in as well. The last thing is the personality profile is very different between a COO and a CEO. So as an example, one of the personality profiles that we use is the Kolbe A profile. And the Kolbe profile is a series of 4 numbers that shows you how people like to start projects. That's the number one thing you learn from a Kolbe, is how you like to start things. So the first number is a fact finder. Anyone who is a high, like a 7, 8, or a 9, or a 10 fact finder number, means that you like to ask a lot of questions before you start a project. That's a very COO personality trait. Most entrepreneurs don't ask a lot of questions. They just start.
Go.
Like they're winging it. They're shooting from the hip. They figure it out later, right? Fire, ready, aim. The second number is called follow through, but what it really is systems. It's someone who puts systems in place before they start something. They put in place KPIs. They put in place an SOP. They put in place a standard operating procedure or a checklist before they start the project. They kind of create the system to start the project. Again, an entrepreneur doesn't do that. They want systems, but they're not going to put them in place. They're just going to wing it and make it up as they go. The third number is quick start. That's someone who starts things before they plan, before they ask questions. That's a very entrepreneurial profile. Most COOs are very high on the first 2 numbers. They like systems. They like asking questions. Most entrepreneurs are very high on the third number, the quick start. The fourth number is called implementer, and that's someone who puts tools or models in place before they start. That's like an IT professional or a contractor or a designer who has to model it all out and have a creative brief, and they work around that. That's really neither the COO or the CEO. So when you understand the personality profile differences, it's key to get someone who understands that they're meant to be a COO, but they understand how to work with someone not like them. It's almost like the men are from Mars, women are from Venus. You understand how to work with the other person, not change them, but how to understand them and work well together. So entrepreneurs need to understand the COO and understand that they're different, understand that they want systems, and then the COOs need to understand the entrepreneur.
That's fascinating. I first of all want to rewind a little bit to what you said about CEOs that say, it takes at least 90 days to know whether I've made the right hire when it comes to the COO. Yeah. In our case, we hear it takes a year. So I'm just going to cut out that little clip, and every time I hear it from one of our clients, I'm just going to send it off to them.
Because you suck at the recruiting process. Like, I'll give you an example. We were hiring a CFO one time, and we narrowed it down. We were using an executive recruiting firm, had them on retainer, paying her 25%, 30% retained, had all the good qualified candidates, narrowed them down, put them through our interview process. We had 3 final candidates that probably narrowed it down to 2 finals that we could have offered to either of them. And I just really wanted to know more about their culture, and I couldn't get enough of it out of the interview. And they both lived in my neighborhood. When I saw on their resume, their addresses, they lived near me. I thought, there's no law that says I can't drive past their house. I mean, it's a little bit weird, but
you did not.
Well, I didn't knock on the door. There's no law that says I can't drive past their house. They put the address down. It's like looking at their social media profile. And I thought, if I drive by their house, I'll get to know them a little bit. I went past the first guy's house, and it was very kind of beige. There was really nothing there. There was no really nice landscaping. It didn't stand out. It was just kind of meh. Didn't really speak at all. Then I drove past Trish's house, and Trish was the one we ended up hiring. It was really cute. It was really nicely decorated. The landscaping was all done. You could actually see through the front window, and like her dining room was all set up with like art and stuff. And I was like, God, I can hang with her. Like, I like her style. I like the landscaping. It feels nice. It felt like my home, and it felt like Brian's home, the CEO. She fit. She just was like us. And that was when you really, you go to that degree, right? And then you do reference check after reference check after reference check. Anyway, I think it's really important that companies really know what they're looking for, know how to find it, and really spend the time digging to find out if it's already there.
I love it. A lot of people say it's intrusive when recruiters look at their social media.
Tough.
We're going to up it now. We're going to start driving around.
I'm going to your social media profile because I need to know everything about you, because I don't want you 6 months in to think you've made a mistake either. If I do all the right work, day one, we all know this is the right fit, and then we can run and build this together. It's too important.
Right, but it's a great point, because it has to be the right fit on both sides of the coin, both ends of the process. And then my question for you, because right now, I mean, you've been called the CEO whisperer. That, first of all, is a really cool thing to be called. But you've spent a lot of time, and especially now with the organization you've created called the COO Alliance, that we'll talk about in more detail. But you work with a lot of COOs from all over the world, and of course, a lot in North America. And I'm sure that as you're working with them, they also change jobs, and they look for new opportunities, and they see the fit is not there. Yep. So what do you suggest to them? Should they try to drive by the CEO's house and see what they think, or what tips do you give them?
I would really, for the COO, think about what's important to you, what matters to you, what do you like, what do you hate, what gives you energy, what drains you. Really do the work to understand yourself and your behaviors and what you're looking for. Instead of trying to see, is that job a good job? Understand you first, and then describe what you're looking for, and other people will start pointing you into the jobs that make the most sense. If you're super, super clear, like I know as an example, I am not a corporate person. I would do very poorly in a Fortune 500 company as a COO. I'm definitely more the second in command for a 50 to 500 employee company. 100 to 1,000 employee company. That's my zone. I'm not good at a 20-person company. It's too small for me these days. But a big corporation where you walk around with a badge, kill me. So I know my space, right? I'd be very horrible if I had to have finance reporting to me, or if I had to have IT reporting to me. It wouldn't work. But if I had operations and sales and marketing and PR and culture and business development, that would be really good for me. Right? So it's really understanding yourself.
Well, but so how can you understand yourself though until you've tried something? And the reason I'm asking that, I heard
You
you
journal.
say,
You journal.
I heard you say in one of the interviews that when you are, or one of the training sessions you did, somewhere I was stalking you online, and I heard you say the following thing: when you are looking to hire a COO, look, and let's say you're looking to grow your business from X to Z in revenue, for example, look for somebody who has done that. And then you gave yourself as an example, and you said, look, I helped grow 1-800 got junk from 2 million to 106 million. Then they were looking for somebody who was experienced in growing it past that, different skill set. I walked away at that point.
Yeah.
But can't somebody learn that on the job? Like, does somebody need to have done specifically experienced that type of growth in order to be the right hire?
You do at times. So when you go from 2 million to 106 million in 6 years, we had 6 years in a row that we doubled our revenue. So when you go 100% revenue growth 6 times in a row, from 14 employees to 3,100 employees system-wide,
That's crazy.
from 12 cities to 330 cities in 6 years, the company's just different. So for the first 5 years that I was there, I'd already done it all before. I'd already built 2 other companies. I'd already built teams. I'd already run franchise companies. I'd built PR teams. So for the first 5 years I was at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, it was easy for me. It was only in the 6th year that I was starting to pull my hair out. They took 12 months looking for my replacement. They brought in the former president of Starbucks to replace me. Lonnie had been running North American operations for Starbucks, multi-unit operations, a big brand, national training programs. She came in and said, "Wow, what a cute little company." And I was like, "Oh my God, it's really big." So she had this skill set to build something. They actually made a mistake. It didn't work out in bringing her in. They ended up getting rid of her a year later. She was the wrong culture fit. She had the skills, but she was too corporate. She didn't believe in the entrepreneurial, as I understand it. She didn't believe in the franchising. She didn't believe in the blue wig culture. She was too much about corporate and consultants and big business that culturally she disconnected from the core and the essence of the company. So that's why it's so important to look for the proven skill set and that you culturally fit the company you're going to be working with and you culturally fit the CEO you're going to be married to, because that's when it really becomes like the nitroglycerin. That's when it really opens up.
And actually, I'm curious to see what our audience thinks about what I'm still obviously completely stuck on your comment about driving by people's houses, which, by the way, I love and I'm going to start doing now. So I'm saying it from the standpoint of it makes total sense to me. But I'm curious to know what our audience is thinking. If you are a COO, which I know the vast majority of you are, and you found out or were told that the CEO of the organization that's interviewing you just drove by to see, what your house is like and what you're all about, what would be your reaction or impressions? Personally, I would think it's a bit weird because that's unusual, but kind of cool. I do feel my house represents who I am, but I'm curious to know if people will find it controversial.
Yeah, no, we didn't tell the candidates at the time that we were doing it, and it wasn't part of our normal interview process. It was just me wanting to make sure that culturally we were hiring the right people, and I will lift over every rock until I know. Like, I just need to know. I'll give you another example of how I need proof. I was interviewing someone years ago. This was prior to PDAs, prior to our handheld computers. And I was looking to someone who could manage time and manage projects really, really well. They had to be role model at time management and project management. So I'm interviewing this guy, and he's explaining how he manages projects and takes all of his tasks and puts them into A's and B's and numbers them as A1, A2, et cetera, how much time on each, and puts them into his calendar. I'm like, God, this is perfect. And I'm like, where's your day timer? He goes, it's out in the car. And I'm like, is everything you just described to me in your day timer? Oh yeah, that's how I do it. It's how I plan it. I've done it for years. I'm like, that's amazing. So like, if I looked at your day timer, it would all be in those. Yeah. I'm like, can you go out to your car and get your day timer? And he goes, well, why? I said, I just want to see if you do what you know how to do it. It looks like you know how to do it. You've got all the theory, but I want to see if you really do it. So go to your car and grab your day timer and bring it back in. He said, okay. He grabbed his jacket, went out to the car. I've never seen him since.
No, just left.
Because there's no way he was doing it. People embellish. A players will prove what they say they can prove. So another example was years ago, I was hiring a guy, Christopher Ian Bennett. He said he spoke 4 languages fluently, had been a pro surfer, played pro soccer, managed a bar, played cello in a symphony orchestra, was on Rock and Roll Jeopardy, and had written speeches for Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin, 2 Canadian prime ministers. He was 23. And I called bullshit. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way a 23-year-old kid has all of that stuff. He goes, I can prove it. I said, great. I need proof by Friday. This was a Tuesday morning.
And on which one? Which one did you ask for proof on?
I want proof of all of it. You gave me 8 things.
All of it.
You think you're that good? Prove it. He goes, I need it by Friday. He goes, I can't do it by Friday. I'm like, I got you. He goes, I need till Monday. This was back in the fax machine days. He goes, my mom's going to have to fax me some stuff and courier me some stuff. I'm like, great. If you can prove it by Monday, I'm going to hire you. Monday, he came in, photos of him in surfing magazines with his name in the magazine.
Right.
Pictures of him in the symphony orchestra, London Symphony Orchestra, playing second cello. Pictures of him managing a bar at Western University. He had 3 people in our call center interview him in French, English, or French, Italian, and Spanish to prove that he spoke those languages. Like, he proved all of it. And then I did reference checks. Then I did personal and business reference checks. He didn't have a long business career, but I thought, someone who's such a Renaissance man must drive people crazy. Do people like you, or do they think you're an asshole? So I called his current boss. He stood beside me at his desk, at my desk, when I called Mark Hamilton, the CEO of H Careers. And I said, I'm calling about Christopher Bennett. And he said, what's it about? I said, I'm doing a reference check. He said, oh my God, you've got my best guy. Nobody does the proper amount of interviewing and reference checks, but that's where you get the great people. This is the stuff that we teach at the COO Alliance, is we all share best practices with each other so that the COOs really get the easy to implement cheat sheets on how to grow great brands. Otherwise, like, business isn't difficult. We overcomplicate it.
Interesting. You have the best stories. And I love that you remember people's names and the details. Do you write your stories down, or they just stick with you?
Christopher Bennett, I hired him. I had a VP and a director of marketing told me not to hire him. I went to the CEO and I said, I want to hire him, but people are worried. He goes, would you stake your name on it? I said, I'd put my career on it. He said, then hire him. I hired Christopher. 2 years later, the VP and the director were both fired. Christopher was with us for 5 years, went on to become an iconic name inside of the company. He went on to become the head of PR for Best Buy Canada, head of PR for Guitar Center, head of PR for communications and Sprint worldwide, and we're still good friends to this day. It's like when you do that work on people and you get the right people, that's what grows companies, right? Is the obsession around great people, the obsession around, and those aren't hard systems to put in place. But most people won't do the reference checks. Most people won't do the background. Most people won't interview with that kind of rigor. So then they say it's hard to find good people. No, it's easy to find good people. You suck at it. Right.
Very interesting. Interesting. I have more questions about that, but we have a question from the audience, and it's from Vince Nicoletti, who is in my EO forum. So I'm going to prioritize that question above all the other questions. Vince owns an awesome business. He's an incredible, business person, and his question is, well, as a CEO, how do I get to know myself better so that I know what type of a COO will be complementing to me?
Great question, Vince. I love EO, by the way, the Entrepreneurs Organization. I was a member from 95 to 2000, and I've done paid speaking events in 26 countries for EO. So I love the group. What I would do as a CEO is a few things. The first one is I would do 3 different personality profiles on yourself. I would do the Colby profile, the DISC profile, and pick a third profile about yourself as a leader to learn about yourself and really read that information to learn about you. Then I would journal, and I would do a few different lists. I would make a list of what you love and what you suck at. I would make a list of what you're really good at. I would make a list of all the core projects that you've led that were successful and all the core projects you've led that were disasters. And I would start to kind of understand yourself a little bit. And then if you're in EO, I would turn to your forum and I would ask your forum to write down 3 things that you're really good at that you should continue doing, and 3 things that you suck at that you should stop doing, because your forum really knows you. When you take those data points and pull them all together, you'll start to understand yourself as a leader for sure. That's one of the big values of coaching. When you have a really good coach, Like I coach a YPO member in Florida who's gone from 40 employees up to 700. I've coached him for 6 years. I know Bobby really, really well. When you've coached someone for that long, and I can call him on his bullshit. So if you have a coach or a forum, they'll give you some of the good intel as well on yourself.
Interest. And Vince, you're the moderator, so you can include it in the agenda. That's our next exercise.
Yeah.
We're going to evaluate each other. You also said earlier in this conversation, Cameron, that COOs do not aspire to become CEOs. And I remember reading somewhere that actually, and I always thought that that was the natural career progression. Like you're the second in command, you're going to be the first in command. But I read also that statistically, only about 17% of COOs ever become CEOs. So it's not even, a thing. It's not just something you think, it's not a thing. And I'm understanding now from your explanations why that's not a thing. But so is that something also that when you are looking for a CEO, let's say or you're helping out one of your clients, one of your CEOs that you're coaching, is that a question to ask? Do you aspire to be a CEO? Why? And then also, like, where does that leave career ambition, desire for growth? Because you're also saying stay in your lane of, if you've grown business from A to B, stay in that lane. And then also, where does that leave the ego of, you're somebody's always second in command, all those
they don't need, well, the first one is you're talking like an entrepreneur who wants to be in command, wants to be in charge, and believes that their brand is associated with what they do. But that's you. That's not the different personality profile of the COO who wants to be in the shadows and doesn't really want that. So if I went to the COO Alliance and looked across all of our members, I would garner to say that 95% of them have zero desire to be the CEO. They don't want the risk. They don't want their mortgage on the line. They don't want it to be their everything. They don't want to be there for 15 years. Maybe they want to be there for 5 and do 3 companies over. And maybe they want to take a couple of years off and go travel. But they don't want your life. They don't, like, they really don't. They don't want that. Brian has been at 1-800-GOT-JUNK for 31 years. I would lose my fucking mind if I had to be there for 31 years. I was there for 6.5, and that was plenty, right? So, but I also did, a chain of auto body shops, a house painting company, a private currency company. Now I've been coaching COOs for, I'm quite good with my career and the trajectory it's been, and I make a lot of money doing what I do, but I don't need to be, in that one brand forever.
I think it's so important for professionals in general. And I don't know how that's going to stick with, the younger generations now that are entering the workforce and growing. But that idea of sticking in your lane, because that's something that you're really good at. I mean, it can be a wide lane. It's not that you're in a very narrow, same thing for, your whole career and you get the golden watch and off you go. But stay in your lane. First, requires self-awareness. You really have to understand what your lane is. But then being comfortable with that, idea of sticking in it and not allowing ego to overshadow, I think is an interesting idea.
Yeah, it's no different than, an artist who just wants to be an artist, or, an accountant who likes to be I would lose my mind if I had to be an accountant. I would kill myself if I had to be an accountant. But there's accountants that love being accountants. There's doctors that love being doctors. There's teachers who love being teachers. There's preschool teachers who love being preschool. Kill me if I had to be a preschool teacher. I love my kids, but not 8 hours a day when they're 5 years old for 12 years. I would go crazy. So we have to understand that people have different personalities. They have different needs. They have different desires. They have different career paths. I have friends who are quite happy sleeping in the same bed 365 days a year and never having to travel. I would lose my mind if I couldn't travel, but they don't want to travel. They have a lot of consistency. They have the same friends. They have this, my brother has lived in the same city for 52 years. I would go crazy living in the same city for 52 years. But but I also admire that he's got lifelong friends and lifelong relationships and people that he has got these deep connections with that I don't have that because I've moved around a lot. So I think it's the same in the roles, that we can't think that just because we are who we are that others might want to be like us.
Interesting. I have to say, I just have to interject with this. I think for all of us who have preschool age children with us at home these days, we have all realized that we would kill ourselves if we were preschool teachers. So
Yeah. And
massive respect.
maybe, we were always complaining that the teacher was really the problem. No, maybe our kid's the problem after all. Maybe the teacher really was good. Maybe our kid was the problem, not the teacher.
No kidding. When we were on the call last week or the week prior, and at the end, my son ran in saying what he thought both of me and you. I realized that, he might be a handful at school.
Yeah.
Professor Carl Moore, who I don't know if you're familiar with his work, he's one of the top 50 global business thought leaders on leadership. He said to not drive by his house until he rakes the leaves.
He's raking the leaves. That's great. I would love that someone's out there and actually will roll up their sleeves and get dirty. I think that's beautiful. I told Trish, the CFO, that I drove past her house. I said, we didn't do it formally. I just drove past them. She's like, oh, that's kind of weird. But then I said, I loved your decorating. I loved your home. And you could see that she kind of softened and opened up into it, right? So I think it's that was before Facebook, right? Now that I have Facebook, I'm just going to go on your Facebook and your LinkedIn profile and your Instagram profile. Or even better, I'm going to go on your TikTok profile. I'm going to see who you really are. I'm going to get you fun.
Right. Can't wait to get that started. We'll see where that leads. Okay, so now I'm curious to know more about the COO Alliance, because I remember, and it had a different name at the beginning, yes? Or was it Back Pocket COO?
No, it was always the COO Alliance. My brand used to be Back Pocket COO, but that was just me coaching. So I left 1-800-GOT-JUNK 13 years ago, and I started coaching CEOs and their executive teams and COOs globally. I still do that today. I've coached clients in around 25 countries all over the world.
Oh.
And about 3 years ago, a few of my coaching clients asked me if I would pull together a group of their COOs so that they could all get to know each other and learn from each other. And I was like, well, I guess if I can get 10 of you together, sure. So I put up a landing page, charged $6,700, and 10 people signed up within 25 hours and fully paid. I was like, shit, I guess we have a program. Like, and then I ran the two and a half day event, and I rented a 10-bedroom mansion, and my assistant cooked eggs in the morning, and we just talked to each other and shared ideas, and I had them present to each other, and they really liked it, and they really got value, and there was lots of breakout discussions, and it wasn't me teaching anything. It was them learning from each other. And what we realized was it was the first time that seconds in commands had a place just for them without entrepreneurs running around ruining it for them. Entrepreneurs have EO, they have YPO, they have tech or Vistage, they've got the Genius Network and Maverick and Baby Bathwater. There's an infinite number of groups for entrepreneurs. And there were groups for marketers and engineers and lawyers and trade associations, but there was never a group for the second in command. So that's why we started it, was just listening to the COOs. And then we put a criteria in place that you need to do at least 5 million in revenue. So we've at least got a floor that's kind of a minimum size business. And we've got members from 5-6 countries that get together 5 times a year. They pick 3 of the 5 events to come to.
That is incredible. But does that not now make you a CEO, because that's right? This is your baby that you're growing. So how are you managing that personality clash?
I'm a bit of a dichotomy where I am more entrepreneur than COO, but I learned a lot of COO skills at a company called College Pro Painters. So in Quebec, where you're from, Montreal, we started Le Peintre Étudiant College Pro. So that's as good as I can do in French, but that's College Pro, the College Pro Painters. We started College Pro Painters there in the 80s. And I was a franchisee for College Pro Painters when I was in my early 20s. So I learned how to run a business by following their systems. And then I went and worked at the head office, and I coached 120 franchisees over 4 years. So I recruited, hired, and trained and coached 120 franchisees on following the systems. So I was very entrepreneurial, but I learned about systems and following systems and systems and following systems. And that ingrained in me a lot of the operational skill set. So then I became the COO of 3 different companies, but I always had that entrepreneurial itch. So they were all very entrepreneurial companies. Like at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I came in as the 14th employee. So I was very entrepreneurial in nature and I was the yin and yang to Brian. When I left, when we had the 3,100 employees system wide, it was a big company at that point. When I did Boyd Auto Body, there was Terry and Brock and myself, and then we built it up to 60 locations. When I did the private currency company, it was small, and we built it up and sold it. So I'm more of an entrepreneurial second in command than a true, I would be less of a COO now. I wouldn't be a good fit for my COO Alliance. Right? So I'm definitely more of an entrepreneurial, and my Colby profile is a 4393. I'm a very high quick start. So I've got a lot of the operational skills, but I'm more of an entrepreneur.
Interesting. And now the COO Alliance. So tell me more about it, because of course I know EO and I know how that functions. We have the forums, we have the events, I know the structure. Well, you said, first of all, the biggest benefit of a CEO joining the COO Alliance is the community and learning from each other. Yeah. But how does that happen? How does that take form? You mentioned events.
So what's interesting is entrepreneurs tend to know each other, but COOs don't tend to know anybody else. They know the other entrepreneurs, but they don't know their seconds in commands because there was never a network for that. So we created 5 events per year, and they select 3 of the 5 to go to. Each event has a theme. So as an example, our April event, the theme is sales, marketing, and PR. So at our normal events, unlike in the COVID-19 area, our normal event, we have 1 guest speaker, and we have 3 or 4 of our members present. And then the members are presenting on the theme. The guest speaker presents on the theme, but the rest of the 2 days is breakout discussions, group discussions, and worksheets around those themes. So it's all related to talking about their business. At this event that we're running in April, the sales, marketing, and PR theme, we have 5 guest speakers, and we have 3 of our members presenting as well. And then we still have the breakouts and the group discussions over Zoom as well. All of the themes, again, are driving to sales, marketing, PR. Our June event, the theme is recruiting, interviewing, selection, and onboarding. Our September event is training, leadership development, and culture. Our November event is all on budgeting, planning, and goal setting. So unlike an entrepreneurial group where you wouldn't want to talk about sales, marketing, and PR for 2 days, COOs could talk about that all day long.
Interesting. And are those the core themes each year?
No, we rotate them out a little bit. We always have themes related to people. We always have themes related to marketing. We always have themes related to technology, to planning. So we kind of rotate them through a little bit, but those are generally what the themes are. And again, because the members are meeting with each other, getting to know each other, we have quarterly calls that we do in between events that I lead for the COOs to talk to each other. We have a closed private Slack channel that they talk to each other over Slack. We have a closed private Facebook group where they can share information and resources. And we set up accountability triangles where 3 members do accountability calls with each other in between events. So there's a lot of facilitated accountability and sharing between members as well. It was really interesting at one of our events last year, Rachel Pachivas, who was one of our COOs, she's one of the very first members. She was at her 8th event over 3 years. And this other guy, Daniel, was in, and it was his 5th event. And they'd never met each other. They'd never actually been in an event together. She was at 8, he'd been at 5. And because of the fact that they were always choosing, they'd never actually bumped into each other at an event. So you're always meeting new, fresh faces. You're always reconnecting with some of the people you know. And then there's all the sharing offline as well. And again, because it's members sharing and presenting to each other, you start getting to know who are the similar types of COOs to you, who are running similar types of issues to you. Some are pure play online businesses, some are offline, some are very digital, some are very, so you get to, some are huge, like 3,000 employees, other at 50. You get to know which ones are your tribe within that group. And because we never allow entrepreneurs to come, it's very focused, very operational, and very much about the COO. And we spend a lot of time talking about how to build an even better relationship with the entrepreneur. So the COO, how to build it's like a marriage. You can have a women's group where you're focusing on sexuality and women's issues and raising kids and stuff, and how to build a strong marriage with your spouse. We spend a lot of time on the marriage between the CEO and COO at all of our events as well.
I heard you say somewhere again when I was doing, YouTube spying on you, that even to an event or a couple of events, you'd brought in marriage counselors. Was that a joke?
No, we brought in a very, very high profile marriage counselor who's on the press. She's in the press all the time. She's on TV all the time. She was just on the Today Show recently. We brought in a marriage counselor, a personality profile, one of the world experts on DISC, and a world expert on communication. And we had the CEOs come to that one event. We allowed the CEO and the COO to come to that one event, and we ran it together. We do that every 2 years. Yeah, really cool.
That's really interesting. I also, by the way, I'd asked you this question and you told me the percentage of female members that you had in the COO Alliance.
It's about 40 to 45% female.
That's crazy. I thought most CEOs were men, and it was even hard to find women.
Not at all. I mean, first off, it's 2020, right? I mean, we're in an era where women in leadership is normal, and women in entrepreneurial leadership, if you're in the 50 to 500 person or 50 to 1,000 person companies, women are playing easily 50-50 roles in the COO role. And you look at who the figurehead is for the second in command today. Like, who is the figurehead COO that we all know of? Sheryl Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook is the second in command to Mark Zuckerberg. So there's a huge push towards women in leadership. We also have, our youngest member is 26. Our oldest is 62. The smallest company member is about 3.7 million. We now have a bar of 5 million to get in. Our biggest is around 300 million, although we have a couple of major brands sending their COOs in right now. We've got the second in command from the Wall Street Journal and the second in command for, I think, Visa United States coming to our next event. So we're starting to move into more of the corporate world second in commands as well. And then our smallest on the employee count's around 30, and the biggest is around 3,000. And then we've got members from the UK, Germany, Venezuela, Australia, the US, and Canada.
Really cool. And again, you did it in very few years. You're like, go from nothing to here and like this. I found that.
I think it's by listening to the market. Like the COOs are starving for learning. Entrepreneurs understand that if I grow my second in command, they'll grow my company. And then I've always believed we're teaching the wrong person. Like, we shouldn't teach EO members how to run their company. We should teach EO members what needs to happen. We should teach their second in commands how to grow the company. Mm-hmm. The more we grow our people, the more they scale our business. So we just listen to the market.
And that's actually, well, first, I just want to, derail a little bit here. I'm trying not to be completely scatterbrained right now because I get a million questions in my mind at the same time. But because you mentioned Sheryl Sandberg, because you're saying, second in command, you're in the shadows, you're in the background. Obviously, she's become quite a public figure, right? Arguably more so in the spotlight than Mark. So where do you think that fine line is?
That's again the perfect yin and yang with someone who likes to be a little bit more inward facing, operational technology focused like Mark is. She is the more outward facing COO. So I was very outward facing at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I did a lot of the speaking events. I talked to the media. I was all about culture. Brian tended at times to be very inward facing with things. I love to be on stage. Brian didn't love it so much. He likes it now, but didn't love it as much then. Harley at Shopify is a good example of that. So even on my second in command podcast, I have a podcast where I only interview the COO. Everyone interviews the CEO. I want the rest of the story. And I've even talked about a husband and wife. If I asked my mom, how did you raise us as kids? She'd have a very true story. It would be very accurate of how they raised us as children. If I asked my dad, and they were together their whole life, Dad, how did you raise us as kids? He would have a very true story too. They'd be very different stories, but both very true. And that's why we started the Second in Command podcast, was to get that different perspective.
There is no other community for CEOs. You mentioned it before.
There's a small one, I think, called the Bay Area Operators Network, but they're not even in the same game as we are. I think they're $1,500 to belong. We're $20,000 a year. So it's kind of like saying that I have a bicycle and a Porsche. They both get you somewhere, but which one is really the group that you're going to be in, right? Or you've got the Entrepreneurs Organization, and you have BNI. There's BNI chapters all over the world where you can meet, and it's like $50 a year to be a member. Or you have EO where you're paying, thousands of dollars a year to be a member. You get what you pay for.
Interesting. And so then the CEOs that you were in contact with, because I've read the testimonials of your CEOs and seen why where they find value, and it's also very different answers, right? Different people find value in different places. But I'm curious, the CEOs that have sent the CEOs to COO Alliance to become members, why? Where do they find the true value lies? And is it partially also access to you, because you're the CEO whisperer, you're their coach and
Yeah,
consultant?
I don't want it to be around me, but there is definitely some value there, right? I've written 5 books, I've grown 3 brands, I've done the speaking platform. So there is some access to me that they get value from for sure. As much as I'm pushing against that, yes, there is some value there. I think the real value the CEOs get is this. They give their second in command a space for them to share information and resources with other people like them so they don't feel so alone.
Mm-hmm.
Their second in command a space to learn how to deal with these entrepreneurial people that are a little bit crazy, because they're all dealing with somebody who's a little bit crazy and beautiful at the same time. They also recognize that if they give them some skills on recruiting and interviewing and marketing and sales and PR, and like if they grow their skills, their company will grow. So those are all really good values that they're going to get from that group.
It's interesting, what the different aspects of learning that you described, because we have had in the, especially in the recent years, a few of our clients or contacts within organizations that are clients who are COOs come to us and say, they're looking for training and development opportunities. And usually they will say, we're looking for leadership training. But here, when you described all of the different components of your, training and learning events, leadership you mentioned, but it was one among very many. I find
No, it is. I mean, there's a lot of skill. The soft skills of leadership, like situational leadership, problem solving, coaching, delegation, time management, conflict management. We get into a lot of those skills, but then there's also some of the deeper operational things as well. So there's a little bit of both. There's a lot of both. Again, that's probably why the value is that members stay for 3 or 4 years as well. Like we think the first year is really about connection and confidence, that they all of a sudden realize, wow, I actually am okay at my job. Like we had someone at his first event 2 months ago, and he said to me, he pulled me aside. He said, I feel like a fraud in my job. I don't feel like I know what I'm doing in running my company. I've been a CEO for 3 years here. So I asked the audience, how many of you feel like a fraud? Every single one put their hand up. So all of a sudden they realized, wow, maybe this is normal to feel like a fraud. So we talked about it and worked through it all. So the first year is about confidence and connections, getting to meet everybody. The second year members tend to learn a lot of the systems. They go through a lot of the worksheets, a lot of the tools. They're really learning it all. They're not worried about what people think of them anymore. They're actually learning some of the systems. And the third year is you almost get the multiplication from subtraction, where they're putting the systems deep into the business. They're making connections with other people. They're using introductions that they're getting from the group. And by spending the focused time, a little less time on the business and a lot more time on growing the systems and the people, the real multiplication happens. So maybe that's why the 3 years tends to be the mark that people are working towards in the program.
well, the multiplication really should be happening, because I know that the guarantee that you give on the membership price, 10x. Tell about that. Say in your own words.
So we decided that if a member is a part of the COO Alliance, I actually learned this from a group I'm in called the Genius Network, but they said if you pay to come to the COO Alliance event, test drive, it's normally $67.40 to come to a test drive event. Our April event, because it's a pure online event, is $5,500. So what we're saying is, if you don't get at least $55,000 in value, in ideas on how to grow your company or save your company money, if you don't leave with at least $55,000, we'll give you your money back. Like, I don't even want you as a member. If you can't show up and get at least $55,000 or $60,000 or $100,000 in value, I don't want you as a member. Your company's too small. You're not getting it. You're not thinking. We're clearly not for you. No one in 3 years has ever taken us up on that. But it's the proof, the confidence that we have in how much value we're giving. So as an example, at one of our events recently, someone came to the one event. They paid the $6,700 to test drive. They walked out with $440,000 worth of ideas on how to save their company or make their company money. We have what we call bonus time, which is during the actual event, as soon as someone hits 10 times their investment, they yell out bonus time, meaning everything else they get after this is a bonus. And it's pretty funny how we had somebody at the cocktail opening night reception yelled out bonus time. I'm like, what? And he goes, I already got my money's worth for the 2 days and we haven't even started. I'm like, that's amazing. Like they met someone who made an introduction that saved their company about $250,000 on tax stuff. And easy.
Craziness. I'm listening to you and it gets me so excited. I'm like, oh, I wish I were COO
Right.
as far from it as possible, but it sounds really interesting. Another question. So I mentioned as I was introducing you that Vivid Vision, your book was a game changer for me. Okay. And I'm telling you, I recommended it to everybody. My sister is an academic. She is a professor, actually department chair now, recently got promoted, and read the book and said that it was just, monumental for her too. So it's also, across the board can open people's minds also to think in a different way. So thank you for that. But so question, within an organization, whose book is it? The CEO or the COO?
Great question. So the idea with a Vivid Vision is that it is a tool that's always been missing in every company. Most companies have a vision statement. It's that one sentence statement to align everybody, but it doesn't explain what the company looks like and feels like. The Vivid Vision is the CEO leaning out 3 years. So leaning out to December 31st, 2022, almost as if they got into a time machine and they get out of the time machine and they walk around their company 3 years from now. They describe what it looks like. They describe how it's acting. They describe sales. They describe marketing. They describe operations. They describe IT. They describe what the customers are saying. They describe what the employees are saying. They describe the culture. They describe your suppliers. They describe it as if it's in its finished state, and it becomes a 4 or 5 page document describing the company in its finished state so that all the employees, potential employees, suppliers, customers are aligned with what the company looks like in the future. By the way, when you have a really strong vivid vision, it's easy to attract great employees into your company. If you don't have one, everyone's focusing on today. When you do have a vivid vision, it's easy to attract top talent because they're inspired of what it looks like and they know what they can do to help you get there. So it's the CEO's job to articulate a vision. It's the COO's job to figure out how to make it come true.
It's really interesting. And one of the things that you say in the book, and when I read it, I was like, oh, but come on, like, is that really going to work? Where you say that once you create that vivid vision of what the business is going to look like, it doesn't look like that at all yet. But when you start talking to people as though that is, the reality, people start buying in. You start getting all sorts of, better deals with suppliers, etc. Another amazing entrepreneur in my forum, Sana Brock, she did exactly that. She's like, this is incredible. She's like, I'm just talking about my vision and I'm getting this and I'm getting that. But she's completely reinventing herself and just started, completely from scratch her business. And she's like, people are treating me as though I'm, 3 years ahead in the future just because I'm talking that way, which is really interesting.
Very cool. Yeah, it's almost like a contractor who is hired to build your dream home. The homeowner has a dream of what they want the home to look like. And when they explained it in enough detail, the contractor can make the blueprints or the plans to make the vision come true. The contractor's job isn't to design your home. It's to come up with the plans to make your design happen. In the business world, the entrepreneur's job is to explain what the company looks like. The COO's job in the leadership team is to figure out the plan to make that vision come true. And then you put in the foundational pieces and you build up from there.
I love that. Yeah. I'm going to, by the way, everybody who's watching, I will include the, Amazon links to the book so that you know exactly what we're talking about. And I will also share with everybody the link to the event that you have mentioned, Cameron, that's taking place in April. It is this month. We are in April. I'm losing track of months. I will share that with our viewers as well. I have about 5 million more questions, so I hope that you will join me for a follow-up interview because I have pages of things I wanted to talk about. I talked about none of that because I was just going with the flow of our conversation.
It's great. Yeah, I'm happy to. And if everybody who's listening, if they want to share this on LinkedIn so that we get more people kind of being exposed to this, that'd be great. I'm all about helping entrepreneurs and their teams make their dreams happen. So thanks for having me.
And you really do just that. So thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mariana.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. If there are any questions that I missed and didn't answer, been trying to keep track of the feed. If there's anything, feel free to also send them to me privately in a private message, and I'll connect with Cameron and make sure that he gets them answered. Thank you so much for joining us.